Okay, I want to show you the truth of the end time, and I want you to be able to see it very easily. And then that way, when you see all these ignorant and false teachers, you can differentiate between what they teach and what the truth is. So let's get into it. In Matthew 24, it says, after the tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, stars shall fall from heaven, the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And this is when the sign of the Son of Man, which is Jesus, appears in heaven. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect. All right, so this is also repeated in Mark 13 and also in Luke 21. All right, and then again in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16, it says, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Now keep in mind, remember that the with the shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, this exactly parallels the great sound of a trumpet that we read here in Matthew 24. Okay, so this is undoubtedly the same event, the same moment in time, right? So once you establish that, then you can understand that this, I mean, it should be already clear, but if you had any doubts, this, when Jesus comes, this is the when we are resurrected, just as Paul describes here, first the dead in Christ, and then those of us that are alive. We are also resurrected, transformed in the twinkling of an eye, and we are caught up together with all the believers, all the saved, in the clouds of heaven. And you remember, Jesus is coming in the clouds, right? And so we're all caught together with the Lord, and we are up in the air. And then down below is all the unsaved, okay? Just like we read in Revelation 3 when it talks about how uh, God will make them to come before our feet, to worship at our feet, and to know that God has loved us. All right. And also in Daniel 12, it says, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So there's coming a resurrection, some to everlasting life, and some to everlasting contempt. And this is parallel exactly with first the dead in Christ shall rise, then those of us which are alive and remain. And that also again, it parallels Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, when he shall gather together his elect, right? Gather together his elect. So now we can go to Revelation 20 and read first verse 5. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. All right, so if you can understand those other 5 verses, you ought to be able to understand this one. All right, because the resurrection occurs when Jesus comes in the clouds of heaven. So in verse 5, it says, the rest of the dead live not again. And that parallels what Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians 4. First, the dead in Christ shall rise, then we which are alive. But the rest of the dead live not again till the 1,000 years were getting ready to start. No, we're finished. This is the first resurrection. All right, so we that are saved are partakers of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We are passed from death to life. We are now alive when we are born of the Spirit of God, and we have Jesus abiding in us. and nothing will ever take that away. Okay, and to me, this seems very simple once you understand what Matthew 24 is talking about when he shall gather together his elect. You make the connection that this is the resurrection, first the dead in Christ, and then you read Revelation 20, verse 5. But the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is all the same resurrection. This is, in fact, all throughout the Bible. Everything in the Bible is pointing to the great day of the Lord. And let me remind you again, in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, the disciples are asking Jesus, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Right? And so when Jesus comes, uh, when Jesus comes, this will be the end of the world. Right? And it's interesting because when they ask him that, the very first thing he says, take heed that no man deceive you. Okay, think about it.